Okay, welcome very, very much to Conversations. A great pleasure to welcome to the program Bennett Kermen. He's down as an adventurer, and he's an intellectual. He's a public intellectual. He's a writer. He's got this book we're making clearly here on the stand, Savage Days, Haunted Nights. He and I have had some interesting conversations on the telephone. And we're going to be talking about some of the events. I guess we're going to key off what's gone on in Egypt recently and so forth. But Bennett, welcome so very much to Conversation.
Very glad to be here.
We're both of an age that we begin to look like graybeards and so forth. You brought in an article from 1973,
yes,
back in a time that I thought was a very important time. But maybe you could share with us your own background, just born and raised, a little of your education, and then let's talk about Egypt, revolution, what's in the air, are there any general strike possibilities for the whole world or that kind of thing? But share your own personal background, born and raised.
Okay, I was born in Chicago.
Okay.
And raised in Chicago. And then I went away to college, to a small college in Ohio called Antioch College.
I know. You told me on the telephone. I
that.
went there for a summer session, and the thing I remember most about it, they had a great saloon there, I remember, where they had a very
Ye
deep...
Old Trail Tavern.
You gave me the name. I had forgotten the name of it, but that's really stuck in my mind. But it was a great school. I'm sorry it came into difficulty, yeah.
Oh, it's a great shame, because Antioch, in its day, in the 50s and into the early 60s, was a most adventurous, a most courageous place.
Right.
And ideas were allowed to flourish there that were not accepted almost anywhere else in America.
Do you remember how you made the selection of that to go to, that college to go to? Was it coming out of the family background? Was the family background intellectually oriented or liberally oriented? Antioch's thought of as a liberal place in the best sense of that word. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was a family black sheep.
Okay.
So I dropped out of high school for various... I had dyslexia.
Did you really?
I had it very severely. So I had trouble learning to read.
Yeah.
And I had a very intelligent family.
Yeah.
So I was already sort of an oddball in this family. So I went to where I could find recognition, and those were among people who didn't care if you knew how to write and read. So I ended up hanging around the pool halls of the west side of Chicago.
On the west,
I had that experience, but at the same time, I came from a family of very well-educated people.
Okay, yeah.
So my brother Erwin, who's an artist and a professor at Duke University, he went to Black Mountain College.
Oh, yeah, Bucky Fuller.
But he knew Bucky Fuller.
Merce Cunningham,
Cunningham,
and
John
Cage,
that whole crowd. He was right in there. I met all of them through my brother.
Did you really? Did you meet Bucky then?
I met Cage and Cunningham.
Yeah, right.
I didn't meet Buckminster Fuller.
He was my hero. Is my hero.
Oh,
Anyway,
he's a 1 in a million.
I think so. 1 in 7 billion. I think maybe. I think he's the best mind in the history of mankind.
He's
who put
pretty
it together
terrific,
comprehensively, that is relevant to this day. Yeah.
So I visited my brother in Greenwich Village from Chicago. I loved it.
You loved the city.
I can go into what the village was like in that era. It was a fabulous place.
What year are you talking?
That must have been, I was 17. That was 50 years ago.
Okay, right. Yeah. Okay.
So
you came to visit him.
I came to visit him. What an incredible place. We could spend a whole hour on that, but I don't want to get diverted. There's so much going on in the world right now.
I understand exactly. That's the thing I'm thinking about. There's so many things going on, interrelated. It's like a Roman candle going off in my head, what's going on, the possibilities.
Yeah, it's big.
That
Harold.
Winston, or no, what's the name of the computer just beat the best people on
Wilson.
Wilson. Not Wilson, it's not that. It's the guy who started.
Watson.
That's a big Wall Street Journal today. I had it, and Kurzweil had an article on artificial intelligence and the significance of that. I think that was. But what I'm trying, multimedia is emerging. You got the social. It's all going off, and it's all interconnected. We're beginning to be able to get patterns. I begin to think that are going to come to a kind of fruition. But back to your early days in
all right,
New York.
So I wanted to say, hey, I loved the village. I wanted to go live in the village, and and you know, just absorbed that atmosphere.
Was this before or after Antioch?
This is before, just before Antioch.
Okay, right.
You asked me how I got to Antioch.
Yeah.
So my brother was a little worried about me because I'd been, you know, black sheep, gotten in a little bit of trouble and all. He didn't think I was 17, 18, I should hang around the village. He said, there's a place for you to go where you'll have the village and a good education
Antioch.
in a nice rural setting, you know, and if you get in trouble, it'll be an organized place to get in trouble.
Were you
know?
political then?
I started to get political then, yes.
Left, right?
Left,
Yeah.
definitely
No, left.
Left.
Yeah, right.
You know, we were talking earlier, do you have to be a Marxist to be on the left? I say no.
You do say no. Have
I
you
say
said
no.
that all along?
I've always felt that.
Marx was a hell of a sociologist.
Oh,
and he read a lot of things right.
Many things, but he didn't invent socialism.
Okay,
Socialism
no.
existed
Robert Owen
before him.
Yeah.
You know, the Paris Commune.
Yeah, right.
During
Okay.
the French Revolution.
Right,
Was a commune.
Okay, yeah. Right.
So, you know, Marx has something to offer, but he doesn't own this territory. This territory has to allow, as we were talking privately, it has to allow an openness of mind. We need new, fresh ideas.
Right. Open society ideas are important.
Right.
Yeah.
The left needs to revigorate
the left and
itself.
the intellectual community.
Yes.
So that we're talking about the intellectual community,
Right.
not necessarily the politicians or the business guys or something.
Well, it should start with the intellectual
I
community.
think the intellectual community has an obligation to give something like what Bucky Fuller used to say, and we may be getting to it. What we need, or it was he observed, and he said, it's interesting, this spaceship Earth that we live on, he coined the term spaceship Earth, it didn't come with an operating manual. If you have a new machine, you get, and it gives the parameters, the overall parameters, but we're getting down now to where we actually might be able to have the means of having an overall comprehensive understanding of the evolution of everything, including humanity and its social orders and things like that, in a way that we haven't been able to have historically. We're getting to where we can have an operating manual for Spaceship Earth in terms of incorporating history, political movements, and that sort of thing. An awakening from the nightmare that James Joyce said was history, perhaps.
Harold, it couldn't come any sooner. If it's coming now, it's coming in the nick of time.
Yeah.
Because they just, you must have read that there's a new research that just came out that this extra rain and snow and floods and all we're having could be global warming related. Very, very reputable study. It just came out in the last couple of days.
Yeah, I know. The stuff's coming
proving that this we've all wondered. Here's empirical, they're showing empirical proof.
Yeah, for climate change.
For climate change.
Yeah, right.
So big stuff's going on there. And elsewhere. You talked about Egypt.
Yeah. Wasn't that something else, like a David Lean movie? You know?
Yeah.
You see the guy come in on a camel? It was like something out of Lawrence of Arabia.
I really wonder if
it was like Metro Goldwyn Mayer spectacular.
They had central casting to put that all together.
I don't know how they got all that talent in one place, and it was a piece of reality. But it was signaling something perhaps that's really going on.
It was riveting television.
It was to me, yeah.
Riveting.
Yeah,
it was absolutely wonderful. And you know, we were talking earlier. Some of the ideas that came from people that were interviewed in that square, one guy, English-speaking guy, said, you want to know my attitude of what's happening here? Give me liberty or give me death.
Patrick Henry.
That's on tape. You can look into CNN and you can find that guy saying that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's an interesting take. Or what do they call it? A bite, you know, a sound bite, in which is suited to the era. And I was just chatting with you that I was thinking in the shower. A guy had written, we have a social, economic, political, cultural organization of world society, and it was Bucky who called it a spaceship Earth that we live on, and that sort of thing. And everything is interrelated. We're understanding that more and more. The notion of Gaia is an interesting one, and so forth. And but then, where does it begin? Where do we begin? And it seems to me, I suggested to you, I just remembered a fellow Herman, Edward Herman, I think his name is, serious historian, and we're talking about the modern age. And we're talking about shifts in things in the modern age. And he had a book he titled How the Scots Invented the Modern World and Everything in It. And the point he's making is that following feudalism, Rome and whatnot for 1,000 years, it was 1776. And we made a revolution here. It was the steam engine was invented, a precursor to an industrial revolution that was ahead of us.
Along the lines, you had Locke, Hume, and
yeah.
You had the empiricist philosophers. All men are created equal.
Right.
That's exactly where it came from.
John Locke and natural laws, juris, a lot of the things like that. A lot of the things.
Tabula rasa, that we're all equal.
Yeah.
These ideas, you're right.
Anyway, he made the point, this fellow, and everything. And then also you had the invention of the steam engine, which was a harbinger of an industrial revolution ahead of an agricultural-based feudalism and so forth. And you had Adam Smith, and he invented The Wealth of Nations. He wrote The Wealth of Nations, 1776. And then you had a group of people across the ocean from where legitimacy in the mind of the world powers at the time resided, which was feudal Europe with the hereditary, the dynastic states. They were thought of as legitimate historically. They were the carriers of history legitimately.
The divine right of kings.
It came to be seen, and they're right, in Acton said, power tends to corrupt, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and they were heading for a cropper or a break with history. But now, the modern age, and they said invented them, and I think it was 50% of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were Scots. That informed Les Miserables of France and so forth. This was the thing. So that is the pattern that has been more or less made different. We had Marx, we had critiques, we had this kind of thing and everything that is set up and thought of and attempts to assume the United States emerging out of the Second World War, after Britain, sea power based that had led for a long time prior to that, we emerged as the power with absolute power out of the Second World War, and we've got a system that we've inherited, including all kinds of notions of architecture, social organization, all kinds of institutions that are reified and built up. And we have the notion that we are like the royal states of feudal Europe, legitimate historically. And people then who can align with us then are legitimate, and the people who are talking about something different than that are in a certain sense thought of as being well, let's see. It used to be the commies. Remember, we were all against the commies.
Right.
Remember the old days?
I remember.
But now it's the terrorists, and that they are terrorists who do not cotton on to us. China's going along with us. Russia imploded, that sort of thing. So we think of ourselves as legitimate historically. Do you think that is something? And the other countries and the institutions will relate to us in that paradigm way. And I'm wondering if that's something that's coming into question as our system runs into inherited contradictions that are not going to work for us here and as an example for the world in terms of political and economic organization in these very days. And that general strike notion that sees Egypt will finally, maybe soon, come to the United States, where the people will realize the system in place is not adequate to what the future requires. We need a qualitative change for universal justice to awaken from the nightmare of injustice which James Joyce touted as history. What do you think?
Well, there are two things that relate to that, Harold. Number one, our dominance in the world is shrinking.
It does seem to.
All right. So that in itself, without anybody firing a shot or writing a pamphlet or doing anything, is going to change the dynamic of things.
But who's challenging? China?
China, India,
But China's
Brazil.
following our pattern. They think of themselves as Marxists,
right.
and they've signed on to our paradigm.
All right.
The way of forming capital, the way of organizing society. They're what the Marxists would call a running dog to our pattern that we say is legitimate. And they're okay because they've joined our team.
What it might force us to do is to finally look at our paradigm.
Thank you. And not only a
finally look at it,
Bennett,
because our paradigm is going to China and India,
Yeah.
and they're going to swamp us. We got to
Okay,
we
well,
got to
go
be
on.
Americans. You know, as
ahead.
much as I'm on the left, I love America.
Yeah, I do too. I love them.
We got to be creative.
Yeah.
And Obama's barely hinting at it. You know, we got to innovate. Yes, we got to innovate in a lot of ways. We got to innovate not only in new technology, we're going to have to innovate socially. We're going to have to innovate politically.
The whole financial system needs a redo.
Oh, redo.
Yeah.
We barely touched the surface. The crash was a wake-up call, and we haven't really answered it
I haven't
yet.
got an answer to it. And
Except
they're
if
caught up in an outdated way of thinking.
Take a look at Wisconsin.
I know, you told me,
today.
you alerted me to that.
Something very important is happening. You know, I wrote this article.
Yeah, let me talk
This is for the New York Times.
Okay,
it's a piece about
we did.
young laborers.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Let's go back a little bit. To
I want to get to Wisconsin.
Okay, we will. But you came out of here. You came here, and then you went to Antioch, and then you became a writer, and
Yes.
you've done writing.
Yes.
And you've been a bon vivant, you know, or you've been
I've done that.
Yeah, and that kind of thing. And among other things, you've written for a great number of the major outlets like the New York Times, and we have you've written on labor.
Yes.
Okay,
that's why I know what's happening in Wisconsin.
Did you know
it's
Raskin?
very big.
Was Raskin?
Abe Raskin.
Ab Raskin
Yes, I
from
knew
the
Abe
New York
Raskin.
Times. Yeah, he was a writer on the.
Yes.
Anyway, this is the New York Times, ladies and gentlemen, a major article, front page, from September 9 of 1973, major article that you put together and they published in the New York Times on labor, right?
Right.
Talk to the issue, or we're showing it as we can on the screen.
All right, so I'm going to weave that into all the things we've been talking about.
Thank you.
That article I wrote in 1973, I wrote a book called Dateline America that took me out west. I traveled all over the country looking for the direction, you know, what to expect. And I discovered that there was things that were happening among young blue-collar workers.
Okay.
It was called the blue-collar blues in that era. Young workers were being affected by the youth culture of the 60s.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't as hard hat. They were beginning to move toward where the youth culture was of the 60s. They were moving left.
This was a little. It might have been
Lordstown.
some of the things you were doing a little bit before 1973.
Right. It was
that was
before
a
that.
major period of qualitative transformation.
What I discovered
in the zeitgeist.
The young workers were beginning to really radicalize. That's when the hammer came down. Right in that era, there was a reaction to it all. There were two things going on at once. There was this big change among young blue-collar workers. They started smoking marijuana. They were listening to John Lennon. In this plant in Lordstown, Ohio, in that book I wrote, I worked in a steel mill in South Chicago where Obama did his community organizing. I knew people he knew in those steel mills.
Right, okay.
The Southworks, it was called. And I was in Detroit. I was checking out, it was the beginning of what's called the Rust Belt, where American industry was falling apart. I saw it. I wrote about it. And I saw that one of the solutions for the Rust Belt was happening in this plant called Lordstown, Ohio plant.
Okay, what was happening?
What was happening? It was a brand new plant, and there was a brand new compact car, and they hired a brand new workforce for that plant. They were all in their 20s. It was brand new, no seniority, no nothing. They had to staff the plant with new people. They put in all these new young people who were hip.
Yeah. Okay.
They were getting influenced by the youth culture. They came into the factory to face the Charlie Chaplin, factory.
Modern times.
They didn't like it.
Yeah, right.
They
well,
were not
would?
comfortable with it. They did not like it. They came into the plant. They were smoking marijuana, and their imaginations was fired up.
Yeah.
They came into the plant and they saw that they could do the work rules a little different and do the line.
Really? Okay.
Really.
Yeah.
And they developed a system called doubling up. This is how they did it spontaneously.
Yeah.
A guy would be in this spot on the line, a guy would be next to him in this spot on the line, and the UAW and General Motors would negotiate. They'd have these heavy-duty negotiations. Say, well, you're going to get 10-minute break at this point, and 4 hours later, you get another 10 minutes, you get a half an hour for lunch, and otherwise stand in your spot and do your work and shut your mouth.
Taylor.
That's right.
Taylor was the one. Taylor was the one who influenced that.
And
yeah,
they didn't like that.
I mean, as a theoretician.
It was
later,
not. It didn't fit their temperament and everything they were feeling.
No, it's fit for Corey slaves.
It was for wage slaves.
Right. Well, that's okay. Right. Okay.
They were not wage slaves. These kids. I got to know them very well. I'm still in touch with some of them.
Good for you. Good.
They came in and they realized that you don't have to take your break for 5 minutes here and 5. They realized that the line was at a certain pace that you could stand in your spot and do your job very fast for a half an hour.
Okay.
If you did it for more than a half an hour, you would drop dead. But for a half an hour, you could do it.
Yeah.
So you can take your spot and the spot next to you.
Yeah, right.
You can do both of them.
Okay, yeah.
For a half an hour.
Yeah.
So then you go out and have a smoke.
Yeah.
Call your girlfriend. Be a human being.
Yeah.
Live, walk out, do this, hang around. And your buddy covers you. You double up. He doubles, takes your spot and his spot. So for half an hour.
And everything gets done.
Everything got done.
It's sort of like an anarcho thing.
Right. It was purely an anarcho thing.
And
that's what it was.
It would drive freaks.
Drove them nuts.
No, it would drive the control freaks nuts.
I'll get to that.
Yeah.
The inspection tickets on the cars that came off the line at the end of the day were the best in the General Motors system.
No fooling. Really? What car? What
it was called the Vega, the Chevy Vega. Okay. It was the first compact car built in America.
Really? Yeah.
There was absenteeism and trouble in all the plants in America as the young people were coming.
As opposed
they did not these people, they didn't have to do that absenteeism because they could come into work and take a half hour off when they wanted to.
And they could just let us. It's like freeform jazz.
It was freeform jazz.
It was like
they riffed
train. It was like train.
They riffed it.
Yeah,
they came up with this thing. All the PhDs in engineering, all these guys.
Industrial engineering, they call it.
So I wrote about it, and I documented it. It was one of the most tragic things in my life.
Why is that? Because
the International Union and GM got from this article what it is they had to do to destroy it.
Wow.
You're talking about, the control freaks.
Right.
They did not like it.
I know.
They were threatened terribly by it.
That's right.
And they systematically broke the little union and broke the movement and destroyed the spontaneous, organic.
Can't have that.
Can't have that. Well, what happened in Egypt was a spontaneous, organic thing.
Okay, yeah.
But what I saw in Lordstown
a general strike.
What I saw in Lordstown was an organic. If left to our devices, left to human creativity, all kinds of things could happen. But we have to make it possible.
Were you familiar with Bookchin, Murray Bookchin? Yeah, an anarchist guy. He was good. I remember.
Is he still around?
No, I'm not sure. I think I hear tell he's up in Massachusetts. He's got to be very advanced now in age. But he wrote interesting, like anarcho kind of things like that.
Right.
He was a companion to, he could be combined with Fuller, in a way. Fuller, both of them had that's really interesting. You did that. You've been writing on that, and the spontaneity.
We're having it.
How does it happen that people long suffer, and then something comes, a spark?
There's a limit.
Then there's a movement. Yeah.
All right. In Wisconsin today, why I think it's so important, Harold. The Tea Party. In Wisconsin, won the governorship, and they knocked out Feingold, the senator.
God, Feingold was wonderful.
He was a good guy.
Absolutely, yeah.
They slit their throats in that particular election.
You mean the Tea Party people have done that?
The Tea Party people helped them do that.
But do you think the Tea Party is pushing to the point where they're going to be hoist on their own petard?
That's what's happening in Wisconsin.
I hope so, yeah.
This is what happened in Wisconsin. The governor is not just going to say, look, let's control yourselves. We got to do these
He's
budget
only been there a few days or something, right? The new governor?
He's been about 6 weeks.
6 weeks, yeah.
But he's a fired up
one of those tea
ideologue.
Yeah.
Tea party. Yeah, we're going to kick ass, and I'm going to...
Same things happen in the budget committee, and they're announcing their budget now, or the House is.
That's it. We're not going to fool around. Take off the gloves.
Yeah.
Just put on the brass knuckles.
Right.
And let's go after these liberals, and let's break these unions.
Right. Well,
In Wisconsin, not only is he want them to take a 10% cut in their pensions and pay and what have you, he wants to suspend collective bargaining.
Yeah. Right.
Talk about it.
Back to the sweatshop. Yeah. Right.
Literally back to the sweatshop.
Well,
they wrote. You say what triggers it? There's a point in which power corrupts. Power corrupts. Absolutely. These Tea Party guys got the power, and they got it corrupted in their brain, and they crossed the line, and they created a hornet's nest in Wisconsin that's not going to go away.
And it might have larger dimensions in Washington and
everywhere.
other things where that happens, because
everywhere.
they're going to be pushing something that's going. And it's Lord Acton. He says power tends to corrupt.
Right.
Absolute power.
Well, in the case of Governor Walker, it did.
Yeah, okay, you think so, right?
Oh, I'm sure of it.
Well, he might have to back off. Sometimes they do, but it could begin to look like, what is that, Tahrir Square or something?
Yeah.
It begins to look like Madison,
No, he's
Wisconsin.
acting tough. We're not backing off.
Yeah,
but he may yet. Wiser heads may talk to him and calm him down. Wiser heads in the Republican Party may talk to him, because what he's doing there, if he keeps going the way he's going without compromise...
the movement keeps having an effect like they would like to try and have.
Well, if the governor keeps that position, I'm breaking, no more collective bargaining. He's in effect saying the Wagner Act is over.
Yeah, right.
FDR is good.
Yeah.
No more collective bargaining. That's it. Screw you. You're going to do what I say, and that's it. All right, maybe the unions will give up stuff and willing to take less, but don't give up. Don't ask us to give up who we are. Right. Cut off our you know what.
Yeah, right.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
So if he persists in that idiocy,
or if that movement persists,
there's going to be, there could be logic points to it. As I understand the labor movement. Wisconsin will experience a general strike.
Okay, well, it begins to look like that, maybe.
It might.
In Madison.
Depends on
Madison's a great town.
Depends how stupid the governor is going to be.
And how much power that stupidity that's being manifest by, in my view, by those people are going to have effect in terms of the actual organization of the society that's going to create conditions of that are ripe for general strike in this country, which is the country that's assumed to be legitimate. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And we don't have a system adequate to what the future requires of realizing the existential situation that the evolutionary process represented by Homo sapien is in, when through the extension of your capability into technology, we now have weapon systems that have become species lethal.
Right. They're lethal.
Since about 1970.
Right.
That's a whole new existential relationship.
The sword is hanging over our heads.
All of us.
All of us.
Now, I heard people say, well, we got a START treaty, we did some things, and the Soviet Union's imploded. It used to be the commies that were the problem. But it's even more dangerous now than it was in terms, and the weapon systems remain, particularly binary bacteriological, they remain from modeling, as I understand, they could be tested, that if there was to be an unleashing of the, let's just say, a large confrontation that might come out of unworkable political conditions that these Tea Party people are going to push, and there's going to be general strikes and things where you get chaos and that sort of thing, if they were unleashed, that it would apparently mean the end of the Homo sapiens species.
Well, it could release certain creative things that the country needs right now. We talked about, first of all, the left has to open its brain a little bit.
Well, the left
first of all, it has to learn how to talk to ordinary people.
Well, maybe so.
It's always been a problem with
maybe
the left.
So, yeah, maybe so.
And the intellectuals.
But I associate, now maybe I'm wrong, and there are some people, I guess, Bill Buckley and this, and and you had Burke and things. There were some people of the right, let's say, and there's something to be said for a conservative anchoring to history and sort of thing. But by and large, intellectuals are almost inherently, as far as I can tell, Whitman, everyone, are concerned with the prescription, the thing that comes out of virtually all the wisdom schools. Take care of the least among you, charity, be good, let's be, you know, for everybody, rather than just, in a certain sense, trying to kiss the hem of the power organization du jour, which is what most people want to do, like courtier.
That's what goes back to our basic biology. We talked about that briefly today when I was speaking to you on the phone.
Right.
We were hunter-gatherers.
Yes,
we
for
lived
a
in
couple
little groups
years,
for long before. We did that long. We were the same genetic people that we are now. But we lived that way for 100,000 years or longer.
More, probably. We only had civilization for about 8,000 or 10,000 years.
Right.
I think.
During that period, we lived in groups of 10 to 20.
Yeah.
You lived in it from the day you were born. Talk about the nanny state. Huh?
Go ahead. Yeah.
What I mean by that is, we were never alone. We had real community was survival. You couldn't make it alone.
Yeah, that's right. And Ashley Montague writes well on that about, like, say, pair bonding, nurturing, because it's such a long nurturing process for this. And it was almost essential that there had to be you know, a nurturing context in order for the whole group to survive.
Right. Otherwise, you couldn't make it. You couldn't make it on your own. You had to have this group.
Right.
A part of this group was, if they caught an animal, everybody ate. Leadership was really meaningful because your leader couldn't be a guy who would take you in the wrong direction, or your group would die out. Your leader really had to be pretty good, not one of these hustlers, like like our leaders. Goldman Sachs, and George Bush, and all these people. You had to have leaders that were. So it's in our biology to help one another.
Well,
so the liberals, even to help the weaker ones in the group, in order for the group to survive, you had to have
empathy.
You had to have altruism.
Right.
Altruism has now been identified by the biologists, not only in humans but in animals, as a necessary element for the survival of most higher species.
Yeah.
Wolves have them. Baboons have them. Humans have it. It's in our DNA. If we give up our altruism, the species will die.
I think that's true. I think something like 99.9% of all species that have ever existed over the 3.8 billion years when the organic evolutionary process began from the primordial ooze, have gone extinct. I mean, there's a lesson in that somewhere.
Oh, big lesson.
And so it's and we're at a point now where we've got weapons. I don't think there's any other species that was able to extend consciousness like we could. It's a big difference between finding a cave for shelter and building a house with a furnace. And
Freud wrote a fabulous book.
Who?
Freud, Sigmund Freud.
Yeah, which one?
Civilization and its discontents.
Yes.
He said, here we can fly, we can talk to people 5,000 miles away. Why are we unhappy? We have food, you go to the supermarket, you don't have to go out and wonder if you're going to catch a deer or not, or you're going to live the next couple of days. We have all these, we're still discontent.
Well,
there's some flaws in civilization that has undermined the altruism that we need to take care of one another as a species so that we survive.
Well,
we're in danger.
I hear you. I hear you. Obviously, that's something we can do. Now, what we're learning more and more is that we're coming to know things more and more. In fact, every day there's a revolution comes in from some branch of science or the arts or something over the transom. Monumental.
Incredible.
And you could have lived, a few thousand years ago, and it took 200 years to invent a tack. or something. Now it's just change, coming exponential. It's like the quickening at the end of a pregnancy in a birth canal.
Right.
And we are in that condition now, and we're at a time of qualitative transformation. It's comparable, perhaps collectively, to leaving the womb, not only actually the birth canal. And when you come down and you have steady state, there's a steady state process, and then there's a quickening, and then there's what they call in evolutionary terms, Stephen Jay Gould, Niles Eldredge, and that, they call punctuated equilibrium, the new appears. We may be at a time where on one side of the equation we can wipe out the whole thing, and we've never been able, even as recently as the Second World War, we were impotent to be able to do that. We're not any longer. It's getting serious. It would be like the water breaking in the metaphor of birth or something. And on the other side, you had Fuller and the anarchist Murray Bookchin and others, many others, measuring the capability that the extended technology was, that there were a greater percentage of the world population of the level of capability characteristic of the evolution of what was evolving, and then we got to the point where it reached and crossed the 50% mark at about, from 20 years out, Fuller predicted, it crossed the 50% mark coming out of history, 10% by the First World War, 20% by the Second, 1952, 20-year projection, around the year 1970. That was the time that was being celebrated across the world by intellectuals. There was a great stirring, if people remember that. There was anti-Vietnam. Some people call it the Vietnam syndrome that we're going to try and get over. Another one called it the Woodstock, the Woodstock Festival. There was a moment, it was intuitively being picked up on that there was a gigantic qualitative transformation.
That's when this happened.
That's what you're talking about, 73. That was a very
creative moment.
But the basis of that is the...
That's when the reaction happened.
Well, the reaction didn't quite happen. Yeah, well, it did. It was happening then.
Yeah.
They were really worried.
They were very worried.
They were very worried because
they had their conferences, and they started to organize.
By them, we mean like the Council on Foreign Relations, the elders, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Mr. Nelson,
the Chamber of Commerce,
and
the various manufacturing organizations,
because
the Republican Party people.
Yeah,
they started to talk about it.
They were very worried.
We got to do something.
It's like the people trying to bust the union that made that. There's a spark of spontaneity.
Oh, kill it.
Kill it.
Kill it.
Stamp that sucker out, because you got to put the slaves down, and that kind of thing. Because
Harold, I saw it.
Yeah, I know. But the point being is there was something it's almost one meta step above the reality that we see in the news every day. But we were transcending, in terms of our capability, material scarcity, which had been the condition in which the whole evolutionary process had occurred at the level of capability, not the reality. We inherited institutions, one of which is when they say it would be nice to have a good world, but human nature is inherently greedy and all that. They'll say that.
Inherently greedy. If you go back to the hunter-gatherers, it was inherently altruistic.
Well, you can argue that. I don't know we know too well the period because it's sort of shrouded in history.
Well, I've done a lot of research there.
Yeah, and
they know stuff.
Ashley Montague made very good points for that, a major biologist.
Right, and
so
they've gone beyond
Julian
that.
Huxley did also.
Right.
You can make projections about that.
And they, through bones and studying campsites and studying DNA and bones and this, every which way, they've reconstructed a bunch of it.
But more significant, perhaps, is this thing, intellectual.
Then they can see it with animals.
Yeah.
The living animals today.
Well, one thing for sure is we have to not only have a system that's going to be able to be liberating of the human spirit, as it were, in all of us, and begin to take a Gaia kind of view that there's 7 billion there's 100 trillion cells in a human organism, more or less, and they all count, and they all work as a system, and it works as a system. 7 billion human beings, there's only a small fraction or anywhere coming near able to realize their full potential because the institutional structures won't allow for that kind of a liberation that might be at hand now for the whole of the human society and the ecology.
My hope is,
and that may be in the offing now at this time.
You know what my hope is?
What is your hope?
That this governor in Wisconsin
pushes the envelope.
is a dummy.
Oh, you hope he's a dummy and pushes it.
Keeps pushing it.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope.
It's not, if I may, Bennett, it's not just the governor in Wisconsin. It's that whole
group.
Yeah, they just bloated their budget in the federal government.
Ohio is ready to do the same thing.
Yeah, Ohio. Yeah.
And Bloomberg's going to lay off 6,000 teachers.
Yeah, teachers and that. Yeah.
How do you make the economy better? Well, make a whole bunch of people unemployed and starve out these people, take away these people's health care. That's how we make a better economy.
Well, it's going to be pushed to the point. But they're pushing. But the point,
and they're underestimating Americans.
Okay.
I'm from the Midwest. I'm a Chicago boy.
Well, I'm a Detroit guy.
All right, you don't push us too hard. There's a point.
Well, they got broad shoulders in Chicago.
Buddy, what are you doing, man? I don't want any trouble.
Studs Turco.
Turco.
Yeah.
Don't push me too far.
Yeah,
They're pushing them too far.
Well, if they do, that's what happens in the dialectic, if they do. And the problem is that they don't have, how are they going to handle it if it's true that we have at the level of cave, everybody could have what they need or want. And it isn't zero sum. It isn't as though for one to gain, another has to lose. All of those lessons and notions and peer review institution buildups and everything like that benefit overwhelmingly those who already have, and always it has been. There are always courtiers just trying to kiss the hem of the sovereign of the day.
Well,
that sort of thing.
Governor Walker of Wisconsin's big argument is...
What is it? Deficit.
Raise some taxes. No, we can't do that. Our millionaires will leave.
Yeah.
We can't live without them. You can't live without the nobility.
Well, what about
You can't live without the king. Let him leave.
Well, all right. I wonder about that. Because if you're going to be presenting something new, okay, you're not going to just reify or reinstitute or depend upon history. We do have to have a thing that is going to, if I may, the pattern that intellectuals would provide would be something that could be opening on the liberation of everybody in a way that's newly offered now by the zeitgeist.
I'm for that.
And the ecology.
Yes.
But it would have to be done in a way, if a suggestion, to be really serious, it would have to be done in a way that could not only be liberating the people who've been, deprived.
Liberate the deprivers.
No, yes, it would have to
liberate the oppressors.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It would have to be done in a way to be really ultimately effective.
Right.
It would have to be done in a way that would include them.
I'm for that.
And that's what the left maybe should do by looking for something in terms of what they're saying.
Well, here's an argument along
that will hoist, let's say from a negative scene.
Would hoist them on their petard. Or let them see their self-interest. They got children. There is global warming. They're going to deny it. The rain that we just went through, Wisconsin just went through some terrible blizzards. You want to keep doing that? You want to keep making that argument that we'll ruin the economy if we deal with this? Here's the best way. You take the billionaire and say, you really want to cut the health department and save money on the budget? Well, what about the diseases that are going to be spawned in those poverty-stricken slums you're going to create? Well, it's going to get your kid.
Well, they'll put up a wall.
It's going to kill your wife.
They're going to put up a gated wall against that. Like they did.
Will they really?
Well, no, I'm saying mentally.
Mentally. But they're not going to be able. They are putting themselves at risk.
But what I'm trying to say is then how do you have something that could include them that one sees like the governor of Wisconsin.
Right.
Something where they can be included so that everybody wins. Now that's something that goes beyond the dialectic, where you have a thesis, antithesis, you overthrow the bad.
Right, no, I agree.
That whole thing.
That's the usual left paradigm. We need something better.
You need something that can be inclusive of everybody, and it's the intellectuals who are falling down on a job because we fall into left-wing, right-wing.
Okay,
you understand what I'm saying?
I agree.
And you do agree?
Yes.
Okay, then you have to get some sort of an operating manual for the whole system so that you know what it is, the context at a comprehensive level, and we don't have that, but we may be getting to the point where we'll be able to have a good understanding of the context by which we're going to form capital, the way we're going to create technology, how we're going to distribute demand. You got to get some ownership into people's hands to give them the means to have income other than their labor, because as Keynes said, the labor is going to go to the vanishing point, and Watson just won on Jeopardy the other night, and the idea of distributing labor to the masses while a few group of plutocrats own all the assets is not going to work, and yet Mr. Obama only says, let's create a lot of jobs, people picking up leaves on the estate of the people who own all the capital assets. That won't wash. We have to have an alternate way of distributing income to people other than wages or jobs.
There is some point where, for a number of things that give me some optimism.
Oh, good.
Look at Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
He's going to give away $50 billion.
Yeah, he's convinced a whole lot of his fellows to do the same.
My hat's off to that guy.
What's that about? Why? Why
altruism. It's in our genes. We never really lost it. You know, it got distorted.
You think that's where it is?
It's got distorted. That's altruism. He's a beautiful guy. He's letting that live. It's coming out of him. I don't think even those terrible plutocrats, at some level, it's in their DNA. All right, number one. Number two, they're not dumb.
Not at all. Those guys are very clever.
Those are very smart guys.
At working algorithms.
They're very intelligent.
Derivatives.
They're very well educated.
Yeah, yeah.
They understand. They could read a science journal as well as you and I can. They have practitioners and people working for them who are experts.
Yeah.
They can't be totally blind that believe that Tea Party stuff, that global warming is just a left-wing plot. They got to know better.
You think global warming is a major paradigm thing to be addressed? You think it's really important?
The thing that you read in the newspaper, you can see it in today's Times or yesterday's Times, that this excessive rain that killed all those people in Pakistan, that's created in Haiti, in a number of other places, these snowstorms that have come, and we went through it in New York, it's going on in the Midwest, they're very severe, are greenhouse gas related.
Okay.
This is not you and me speculating. These are guys who send up balloons and they test the ice.
Yeah.
They're doing they follow scientific method. They don't have a political agenda.
Yeah, one of the things bothers me, one of the greatest biologists...
These guys got to be as smart as I am, and they could read papers as well as I can. They got to see something's going on.
Power does tend to corrupt, okay? And the thing is, you have... biology, or let's say that, and one of the leading biologists is probably, if she's is Lynn Margulis. Lynn Margulis, she's got a book, Dazzle Gradually, Dorian Sagan. He's the son of Carl Sagan, and he and his mother, and then he's been writing one recently on thermodynamics, which is really something because we got strings theory now. And is it a closed system or not that we're in? Because we would be in parallel universe. It's amazing what's going on. But she writes on biology. You can't put it down. It's so interesting and it's leading edge. And she's now, I think, I don't want to put words in her behavior and everything, but she is, and others are launching an attempt to make known to the public that there's very serious rumblings within the scientific community because there are threats to faith in the scientific process itself, because the scientific process, by the peer reviews and that sort of thing, are being politicized. Now that's very serious. If we can't believe in the scientific process,
trouble.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But so then it's being politicized, and if you get into the political, you're eventually going to get back to economics, it seems to me. And we don't have an appropriate economic system. Have you ever heard anybody in position of political authority saying have you ever heard anybody say, we have transcended scarcity? There is enough.
You never hear that.
It may be the case since about 1970. It's at the level transcendent to the everyday political because we're all enthralled to 8 outdated institutions. Do you understand? And that we don't have an operating manual, an overview of the reality at an existential level that is the work of the intellectuals to provide, and not the people who are finding identity within the outdated institutions that are to be subsumed and involved, anchorage history. Okay. But it's the intellectuals that are falling down on the job in terms of providing an alternative understanding where these things can be nested within it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
You do. So
yes.
It seems to me like you're trying to get at that and so forth.
Been wrestling with that for years.
Yeah, I too. All my life, I think,
been
and
wrestling
everything.
with it.
But you think
how do you break through conventional wisdom?
Yeah.
How do you crack that? How do you crack that? Oh, nobody will ever be able to say anything in Egypt. Mm-hmm. Everybody believed that up till a month ago, that this is conventional wisdom. They got those people under control. Those Arabs don't know anything.
Right. Well, that's the way it is now. We all live essentially where, in a certain sense, the assets are all owned by a tiny plutocratic class in every political entity. There's a small group who own the assets. The assets are increasingly responsible for production. The masses are, it's just assumed the only way that they're going to get income to buy food for the kiddies is to have a job on the estate where I just did a thing. I was at a computer seminar last night with a lot of people, Man, Computer, and Society. There was people there from, there were a lot of people. It was magic. It was really good. There was a guy from Israel. And you know that the desalinization is making progress. I asked them of water, and they've got it down now in this country of Israel. He was saying they got it down to where something like 24% of the drinking water that is able to be made available to the people of that country comes from desalinization of salt water now, that it's getting economic, and it's a pattern that could be. And then he made a point, and he said, and you know how many people run the whole facility that does this great thing? 2 people. You only need 2 people to do it. The need to have assembly line workers and the idea that the only way the people can get money is to work on an assembly line or on an estate where the asset is all owned by a tiny class, and that relationship is not going to work. And Keynes warned about that in the letter to his grandchildren in 1930. You're going to have, that generation is going to be confronted with massive technologically induced unemployment worldwide.
It's happening right now.
And so all of the things where they just allow the capital to be just...
It's happening right now. This 9% unemployment we got is related to the fact that high tech and robots and all that, they need less people
to produce more.
To produce more.
You can produce more and more, and you don't need the people.
So you don't have to hire all these people.
No, you'd have to find make work if you're going to try and make it work. Right. And if you keep an open society, if you keep offshoring and that kind of thing, those people now have global reach, the people with the sovereign funds, and they can go anywhere they want. There's no reason that they would pay more than they have to or make work for people who aren't needed, when you're going to have multimedia store of human knowledge be available to everybody on an internet. You don't have to have people who are going to have to go to a university and build up a $40,000 debt to get an education, to get a certificate, that gives them an outside chance to maybe make some money in order to buy money for the... Do you understand? The system is unworkable, and we need alternatives, don't you think?
Yes.
And where are they coming from?
Right. Do you have any ideas?
I got a lot of ideas.
Let's hear them.
Well, I mean, we've run out of time. But no, I think, like I said, you're going to have an alternative. The idea is that we only got a few minutes left. The thing in Egypt was massive. Now it's in Bahrain.
Right.
And it might be going to... the big kahuna there, which is
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
No, my instinct.
Bahrain, the Fifth Army, our Fifth Navy is there.
Fifth Fleet is there.
The fleet.
No, my instinct on that is
what?
If that democracy movement really takes hold. I mean, there's a lot of ifs between here and there, you know. But if it really takes hold and spreads, and the Middle East starts to go through a truly democratic, that is the hope for peace with Israel.
You see that as the hope for peace.
Yes, that is the only hope for peace.
They think that the leaders have been bought off.
The Israelis are worried about it, but if they look a little beyond, get past the, go out of the box, get past conventional wisdom, the groundwork could be laid here. For instance, Hamas is calling for elections for the first time because of this democratic thing.
Well, they had elections.
Palestine authorities calling for elections. In other words, they have been influenced by this. Jordan has been influenced. So all around Israel are being influenced by what? By democratic ideas?
Well,
is that going to be really so dangerous?
Do you think we have a democracy? Can you have a political democracy? Everybody gets to vote every 4 years. And an economic plutocracy, and I don't think we have a democracy.
Well,
I mean, I think it's a charade to call what we have a we have a plutocracy, as does every political entity in the world.
All right, in American history, in the last 100 years, two times the plutocracy got stopped. One of the things that has kept the plutocracy in order is the labor movement.
Yeah, okay.
So they've been getting kicked around.
There's only about 6% in the private sector.
So that's why Wisconsin is so.
That's a lot of public sector.
All right, so that's been something. That's been the check and balance. We talk about check and balance. The other check and balance is the government, and twice it's happened in 100 years. Teddy Roosevelt, the antitrust law. He said, buddy, that's it. General Motors, I'm splitting you up. And he did.
Franklin.
And Franklin, same thing.
That's quite Roosevelt.
The royalists.
Those are
two times where democracy worked.
Yeah, the thing that gets me, we're coming right down to the wire now and support. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. My friend.
Really.
We're going to have lots of cups of coffee and maybe a beer or two once in a while.
Yes,
but
can't
anyway,
leave that out.
Yeah, and we got to get. But you said something. How to get from there to here? What I'm saying is how the revolutionary spirit that's moving Egypt is going to get here, and when it's going to dawn that there has to be a qualitative change where it all comes from originally, which is our enlightenment, here in this country, because what we have is we don't have a system that the future requires for liberating, let that begin to resonate here.
Let those good folks, our brothers and sisters in the Midwest there in Wisconsin, let them discover it. Let the intellectuals learn from them. Let's see what they do.
Well, okay, but it's going to have to, I think it's going to come, the intellectuals, it's going to have to come. We have to have something other than what we do by calling against how so many things aren't working. We have to come up with an alternative way of dealing with economic and political realities that's qualitatively different
than
you and
I over
history.
Beer or coffee
we'll figure it out over about the third beer, right?
We're going to go into this.
Okay, by all means. Your pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. Other perceptions of Bennett Kremen. Kremen.
Right.
Savage Days, Haunted Nights. He's a journalist and a bon vivant and an adventurer, intellectual adventurer. And your pleasure to have had his processions. And thank Bennett for coming in. It's a great pleasure talking to you, and really good. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, like the end of Casablanca.
Like the end of Casablanca. Exactly.
This looks like the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
I really appreciate
No,
this.
your pleasure to have his perceptions. Tune in. We're coming back again tomorrow. And so, Bennett, once again, thank you very, very much indeed. Okay. So it's all kinds of things. It's so much. It's like a Roman candle going off. So many different things are coming. It's coming like a crescendo or something like that. I don't know. Do you feel? I feel that way.
It has to. If it doesn't come in a positive way, it's going to come in a negative way.
Yeah, but the negative is so negative.
So negative. That's why I think.
The positive is equally. It's liberation. Liberation may be at hand. This is what this is, Isaac Asimov, we did a program, he said, this is the defining generation. This is the defining moment in the whole 200,000 year episode of human
Remember Wisconsin.
existence.
Wisconsin with Lafayette's place, the progressive movement.
That's true.
That was in Wisconsin.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
They have roots, and that's coming out. That's going to come out. That is, you know, history doesn't die easily.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Well, we've lived. That's why I say we have something to offer to young folks.
Yeah.
We know that.
That's a whole nother thing we could talk about.
another
But what
thing
we got to
to
do is go. We have to go.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take it. Let's go because we've run out of time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Harold. I enjoyed this immensely.
Did you? Okay.
I
well,
really did.